Welcome to the fourth online interactive session with Novia One Group. We've hosted a number of sessions that have looked at behavior, decision-making, strategy in these strange times that we find ourselves in. Last week, we had the experiences of a naval officer, a submariner specifically, talk about his routines and his goal settings and his organizational structures and communication strategies when in Navy conditions. And subsequently, we asked our clients what else they would like to hear. And a number of you stepped forward and said, well, we really need to know about the psychology of lockdown and would like to have more in-depth understanding. So we have found a very capable person who can enlighten us on this, okay? Before going into this, we ask you to provide us with questions to give us some kind of focus as to what to talk about, okay? And we received a huge amount of feedback, some very open, honest, and heartfelt commentary about what people are feeling at the moment, okay? And we have condensed this into 3 themes. The individual at home with kids and in partnerships, and then the individual at work and the concerns about the material part of our lives, the professional part. And each of these themes has a number of sub-themes, okay? What I'd like to do is I'd like to ask some questions by means of a poll, for us to get a sense of how prevalent certain issues are, and then we will talk, or Melandri, who I will introduce just now, will speak to these questions. Okay, so now regarding issues that pertain to yourself as an individual, it's interesting that there's no one in the audience who ever feels totally out of control, but there is the vast majority feel usually in control, and some, however, a third admit to actually feeling out of control. And that's quite an interesting indicator, and Melandri will speak to that just now. Mental functions and energy levels are too low. There are quite a few people answer too low, are okay for just over the majority, above average, and quite a few people say, well, it fluctuates. I'm craving too much alcohol, only 10%. Well done, probably because there's not enough alcohol to buy at the moment. Food, interestingly, the majority are eating too much, and I have to say I've put on a few kg in the last few days. Smoking, again, very low. That's probably our demographic, and I'm sure that all the 3%, well, that's actually only one person who answered, and I know who that person is. Social media is an issue for a quarter, and then other, I dare not ask, but about a third of people saying they're consuming too much other items. And the worry about one's own or someone else's mental health during these times. Sometimes worried, the majority say sometimes worried. Now that is interesting, okay? I'm going to close the screen and switch over to the presentation. So the sub-themes really are around that we want to cover over the next 60 minutes. It's really one around my perception, or our perception, of what the new normal is, the abnormal or unpleasant feelings that keep on coming up, or feeling overwhelmed, frustration and guilt, fluctuating energy levels. A lot of people that I've spoken to are complaining about having to sleep in the day and feeling tired and just not getting the right balance. And some people are also worried about their memory and their thinking, their ability to focus and function mentally. And the general question around how to balance your health, your mental and your physical health. And then, you know, it goes off into problems like we call them addiction, or we just have a sense of consuming too much or wanting too much tobacco, alcohol, watch too much YouTube, or get caught up in discussions on social media. And then at the extreme end of behaviors is risky behavior. There are people who are complaining that they can't cope at home, and that they're suffering from conditions, or previously weren't suffering from conditions, but just are not able to get through the day, and don't know how to deal with this creeping sense of depression. So you know, what we are all experiencing, and we've spoken to a number of people, a couple of hundred actually. There's a lot of information coming through that that the new normal right now is a little bit outside of what we're used to. Okay, I want to introduce our presenter, Melandri Bridges. She's a registered psychologist and counselling psychologist with the Health Professions Council of South Africa, has a huge amount of experience. She runs her own practice and company called Bridges Counselling and Wellness, and provides individuals and couples and groups with counselling, but also on a sort of a more systemic level provides interventions such as psychoeducation and training workshops. Her special areas of expertise are addiction treatment and holistic health. And as we will now discover, she's very generous and knowledgeable, and shares those insights both on radio as well as in print. You can see the details here. She's been on radio, been interviewed on radio on a number of occasions, and we'll actually also provide you with a link to those interviews in this presentation after this session. And she's also been interviewed by print and Cosmopolitan and in-flight magazines talking about social media addiction. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Melandri now, who's going to speak about the first big theme about our individual feelings, energy, and perceptions.
Hi everybody, I'm going to try and address as much as I can. If you feel as if I'm not explaining properly, please just afterwards ask questions so I can address you directly. I think it's important before we get started on this topic to understand the psychology of lockdown. We need to understand the physiology first. So lockdown has been considered, or COVID-19 pandemic has been considered a crisis. And so when an individual experiences a crisis, we go into survival mode. And we experience stress. When a person experiences so much stress, your brain kind of goes into an inflammatory state. When our brain goes into this inflammatory state, every single aspect of the individual is affected, okay? So this refers then to our perceptions, our feelings, our energy, our general health, our mental well-being, physical well-being, anything that you can think of, okay? So when we then look at the psychology of lockdown, we need to understand that most people operate from an external locus of control, which basically means that when things outside of you are going okay, I feel okay, my thoughts are okay, our relationships are okay. But what lockdown has done, or what this pandemic has done, it's kind of taken this sense of control away. And so in order for the individual to be fully functioning and healthy in all aspects, mind, body, and soul, we need to shift our focus from an external locus of control and shift it towards more of an inside sense of control. So from an external locus of control to an internal locus of control. And I'll speak about how we do that when we go through all these topics mentioned here. So first of all, we need to speak about perception. We perceive things to be a certain way, and obviously lockdown has had significant impact on perception. We were not prepared for this. We could have never imagined that something this would have happened. And now we perceive ourselves to be out of control. We don't know what to do. We feel overwhelmed. And it's important to change our perception through changing our sense of our view externally and shift it more towards ourselves within. And when we do that, we kind of build resilience. So instead of looking at the things outside of you that you can't control, we look within and we ask ourselves, okay, I can't control what's going on around me, but I can control how I view and respond and react to the things that's going on around me. And so when we take control of that, we feel as if we are a little bit more prepared and a little bit more able to cope. Speaking about introversion and extroversion, I don't want to make assumptions, but we tend to make assumptions that introverts need to be alone and extroverts need to be around people. It's actually introverted people don't necessarily just want to be by themselves. It just means that they actually recharge their energy, or they recharge their batteries, so to say, when they are spending times with themselves in their own thoughts, being creative. Where extroverts need to be around other people to kind of recharge their batteries. So as an introvert, I would think that it would be easier for you to cope during a period of lockdown, but it is important not to become a complete hermit. So for those introverts, you like your alone time, but it's important not to become too isolated, because then the psyche will be affected. In essence, what we are going through is basically a massive adjustment, and we want things just to be normal, and we think about what is the new normal. I don't think we'll ever have a definition of what normal is, because we were so used to what was going on before this pandemic came out of nowhere. We thought that was normal. And so once again, our perception of what is normal needs to change. So I like to refer to a new normal as basically just being healthy. So look at normality as just being healthy, physically, emotionally, psychologically. So I refer to all aspects of a human being, your mind, your body, and your soul. And I'll address how we get to establishing balance and being more healthy all round. Our feelings are also affected, and once again, that's due to a sense of being not having control. So we tend to feel overwhelmed, we are irritable, frustrated, we feel guilty, and that's not only related to our sense of control, but also to our brains that are trying to deal with all the stress. Okay, so we need to become more aware of what we are feeling and why we are feeling what we are feeling, if that makes sense. I think it's okay to feel overwhelmed, and I always say it's okay to feel a little bit sad, it's okay to feel a little bit anxious, but to a certain extent. So I always say that feel what you feel, but limit that feeling to a certain amount of time, and then shift the focus to within and ask yourself, what am I going to do about it? And once again, I'll speak about how we deal with that now. I just want to go through all the topics. Our energy will be affected because of our stress levels, because of the crisis that we're experiencing, but it's also because of the incorporation of managing everything by yourself, where you used to have help and breaks, and you got to kind of get a break and get away from what you were doing and where you were, and now everything's just happening at home. You're working from home, the kids are at home, house duties, everything is just happening there. And so I think it's normal to have fluctuations in energy.